What's the story? Welcome back to StoryToob. We are kind of known here on the channel for delving into some crime fiction. And there's a writer, a favourite writer of mine, one of my favourite authors, that I've yet to really talk about in any depth at all. On the channel, I've mentioned him in other videos. And that is Peter May. So, I'm holding here the Lewis trilogy, because this is no longer a trilogy. And I have just read, newly released, The Black Loch, which is now the fourth book in the Lewis trilogy, which is funny, kind of sounds like a George R. R. Martin thing to do, except he finished it. Oh god. While I was still working in the bookshop, I managed to get a signed copy because we got it in stock. And here I am with a signed copy of a brand new book in one of my favorite crime series that he's come back to after over a decade, after almost 15 years or whatever it's been, 11, 12 years. And here's a signed copy in my hands a few weeks ago. So I said to myself, well, I must read this, shouldn't I? So this video will be sort of a semi-review of The Black Loch, but also just a little bit of a pitch on Peter May as a writer, and another pitch for me to get you guys here on what is predominantly fantasy booktube. And we're starting to reach the broader audience of people reading other stuff. But what do I get out of these books, and what maybe would fantasy readers get out of these books? And I'm thinking it's the fact that these are character-driven crime novels, and the location is as much a character as the people populating these stories. As a bit of a disclaimer, if you want just plot, action, shooting, bang, bang, solve the murder, bang, bang, these are not the crime books that you probably should read. These are quite introspective, nostalgic, melancholic character studies that examine and showcase life, culture, history, sociology on the Outer Hebrides, the islands off the coast of Scotland, and the language as well, and not just how they speak English, but Scots Gaelic, the Gaelic language that they speak in the Hebrides, which, as an Irish person, I can understand. So what are these books about? Well, the main character is Finn MacLeod, Detective Finn MacLeod, who lives and works in Edinburgh or Glasgow, depending on where you are in the stories, and he always gets dragged back to the Isle of Lewis. Why it's called the Lewis trilogy, in the Outer Hebrides. The first book in this trilogy, and it's kind of what made Peter May really well known in crime fiction publishing, was The Black House. And this book is as atmospheric as it gets, and it is character driven. Yes, there's a murder at the center, and Finn MacLeod has to go investigate and find out what happened, but in order to do that, he has to go back to this island that he grew up on. He leaves the mainland. He leaves mainland Scotland and goes back to the island and just has to deal with all of these people from his past and unearths secrets and dirt and messy complexity and relationships and just this web of the town and its customs and its the grips of the church and Calvinism that is still very much present in Scotland, especially in the islands, and also this sort of stepping back in time. Peter May himself says when he was first flying to the Isle of Lewis from mainland, he's from Glasgow himself, the pilot came over the tannoy system and said, "Welcome to the island of Lewis, we'll be landing in 15 minutes. The time here is about 250 years in the past." And that's quite funny. It means that things are quite simple in terms of day-to-day life, but the relationships in these books are anything but. And there is always something that you learn about the island or about its history in each book, or some topic that Peter May wants to describe or talk about, but it's always done through the lens of people and being human and what it means to get older, have changing relationships, live a life that maybe doesn't go the way you planned it. Maybe people feel a sort of melancholic nostalgia for their youth, or a kind of melancholy with where they are right now. Maybe they're sort of dissatisfied, but they're just sort of getting on with things. And everybody is in these kinds of moods in his books, but there's an inherent optimism about people and a real love for just figuring things out. And that's actually the last line of the Black Loch. And I think it sums up Peter May's approach to these stories, and it kind of sums up his themes as a writer. He deals a lot with memory, with people remembering things or misremembering things from their past, and it affecting decisions that they make in the present or mistakes that they make in the present. And the fact that good people can make mistakes, and good people can make mistakes that they don't walk away from. And I think that's what his books are really about, rather than solving the murder at heart. So if you want crime fiction that is just plot, 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 and you just want to find out who done it, you will get that here. But you're also going to get human stories about people dealing with shit. And one of my favorite things about him as a writer is the atmosphere that he brings to it. The Isle of Lewis and the weather and the culture is just as much a character as all of these people, like I said. And it's just a joy to read. Now, it's been well over a decade since I read the original trilogy, but the Black Loch, for example, I just finished it yesterday. And it reminded me of everything that I loved about this guy as a writer. I've also read a couple of his other books, standalones. I haven't read his other series. He has a series of books set in China. The Black Loch reminded me of all those little idiosyncrasies that he has. He has quite a simple writing style. It's very easy to read. It's very readable, but it's also quite descriptive and atmospheric. And it's almost based in what is left unsaid by the characters. And that's where I think the real meat and beauty of the books lie. It's also just always rich in metaphor, and you can dig for it if you want. He's obviously blessed with the location and with the setting. It's just inherently rich in metaphor and allegory, or sort of mirroring for what the story is going to be in each book, with this sort of harshness of the landscape, but also the beauty of it, and how dedicated people are to it and how loyal people are to it, even though it beats the fuck out of them. And that's kind of at the heart of what Peter May writes about. And in the Black Loch, Finn MacLeod is now a retired police officer, so he's a civvy now, and he once again gets called back to the island because something has happened. I'm not going to say what the premise is of the fourth book because it's a major spoiler for the other books, but he again has to go back, and he's not really the cop in charge of investigating, and there's not really an investigation or a procedural. It's more so just, again, meeting people from the island, catching up after over a decade, and it's just unearthing past grudges and buried secrets and all of those things that you hear about in movie pitches. But he doesn't so much focus on the murder plot and the action as much as the intricate character relationships that prop that up. Also, what props up those character relationships, the island itself, and what it means historically, culturally, sociologically. And he always uses a certain topic in each book to prop up these intricate relationships that he writes about. And in this one, he writes about industrial salmon farming, which is something that I knew absolutely nothing about before reading this book. And now I kind of never want to eat plastic packaged salmon ever again from a supermarket. And I don't want to give you too much about the premise of this book. This is once again Finn coming back to the island yet again. He's gone and come back from this island so many times because there's a murder directly tied to Finn's past, Finn's present, Finn's future, just like in every other book. And it's not necessarily centered around the action, like I said. Memory and nostalgia are big things that Peter May likes to talk about, and he uses the character relationships on the island and the town dynamics to tell these stories. And I find that a major part of his, or a major aspect of his books, is about coming of age and turning points in life. Whether that is exactly like coming of age, like becoming an adult, leaving school, going to college, leaving the island, going to the mainland, leaving the island, going to a big city. Whether it's then finding love, getting married, getting along with your in-laws, not getting along with your in-laws. It's having kids. It's watching your kids grow up. It's experiencing tragedy. It is sticking together as a family. All these turning points. It's watching your kids grow up and make the same mistakes that you make. All of these elements, all of these things that just make human beings human, fill up Peter May's stories with real meat and a reason to read them beyond just the fun plots. But also learning about those cultural things, those sociological things, the issues affecting the island, the history around the island, like the industrial salmon farming. That is a massive issue environmentally on the island right now and a big cause of concern, which is something that is kind of close to Peter May's heart as well. He's quite an environmentalist. But also the history around the island and the religion. Religion is a big aspect in the Black House specifically. These oppressive religions, especially in these Celtic countries around here, something we know all too well. It's a huge aspect of that, and he uses it, for example, with like repressed memory. There's a character here that has repressed memories, and this isn't the only time this happens across these series. If that's a story, a type of story or a theme that you like, or a device that you like, there's plenty of it in these books. But also history in general and how it affects the present, how it affects the future, how it all is in conversation and dialogue with each other, and it affects decision making. The Chessmen, for example, deals with the Lewis chessmen. These are chess figures, little chess figurines that were discovered in the islands in the 1800s and apparently date back to the 12th century or something like that. There's also a famous plane crash that happened in the island, and this kind of gives a foundation to the story being told in this book. This is the third book. But again, he uses those things as just extra meat for the human story he's gonna tell. This one, I think, is about an old friend of Finn's who asks him to investigate something that's directly related to that. And it's all about the past being in dialogue with the present and decisions in the past affecting situations that are happening in the present. The Lewis Man, for example, is about finding a body in a bog, in a swamp on the island, and what that means for recontextualizing the past and how it makes you view things differently in the past, kind of a bit like the first book as well. All of these books kind of function in this way, and at the center they just tell very human stories. So if they sound like books that you might be interested in, I think you should give them a go. I don't want to say too much about plot and details and who the characters are, but if what these books are about intrigue you at all, do give them a go. I think maybe some of you fantasy readers might really like the rugged landscape and the kind of harshness of that landscape and the weather. You can feel and smell and touch his descriptions and really situate yourself in that rugged landscape and all of the colourful characters that populate these islands as well. And also, if you want to learn a little bit about the Gaelic language, which in Scotland they call Gaelic because it's Scots Gaelic. Here we just call ours Irish. We don't call it Gaelic. But Scots Gaelic is actually, it derived originally from Old Irish. And Modern Irish and Scots Gaelic derived from Old Irish. So there's a lot of similarity, a lot of overlap. And when I read it, I can understand the Scots Gaelic, which is kind of cool for me. But if you want to learn anything about that, it's also a major aspect of these books because it adds to the culture on the islands. And it also kind of differentiates the islands from mainland Scotland, which is interesting in itself. It's also the culture of the islands in dialogue with mainland Scotland, and Scotland in dialogue with everything around it, with the UK. So these are some of my favorite crime books. If they sound like they might interest you too, please give them a go, and I'd love to know, if you do read them, what you think of them. So comment down below if you've read them, comment down below if you will read them, and if you do read them, come back to this video and comment down below, let me know what you think. And if you liked my little overview of Peter May, give the video a like. And if you're just finding this and you're a crime fiction fan, do subscribe to the channel because we talk about this a lot. And even if you're a fantasy reader, stick around for more of these. You might find a hidden gem that you weren't necessarily looking for. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.